traditionally, the neurofeedback is what we would use with ADHD, and it is effective.
And you're saying you're born with ADHD?
Yeah, it really is biological. Kids don't just all of a sudden get hyper. They're really kind of naturally that way. So you're going to ask me this question because everyone does. Does it last?
Does your brain regress?
Right.
Nice.
It can.
Okay.
It can, but usually if your body likes how your brain's, and you don't have trauma in your life and you don't, have some major episode or something, it's going to hold because your brain is going to learn how to balance itself and it's going to do what it needs to do to go forward. Your body wants to be healthy. Your body wants to heal. You cut yourself, suddenly serum and blood come out, a scab forms, and it heals itself, right? Your brain does the same thing.
Well, Allison and Steve, thanks for coming in today.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time. You are the founder, Allison, you're the founder of Archway. There's Archway Support, there's Archway Outreach.
Correct.
We'll obviously get into that. And then Steve, you are the board president of Archway. Why don't we just start there? Explain, what is Archway?
Well, Archway is a professional counseling and neurotherapy practice. So the Archway Support is the profit side of the business. That's where we started back in 2008. We added all the neurotherapy piece to it starting in 2009, and it's been an evolution ever since that. And then Archway Support saw several clients who, including some of Steve's family members, who over the years really, really, really wanted to participate in helping other people get the services of neurotherapy, particularly. And so they said, Allison, please, we can't give you money unless you do a nonprofit. And I said, I don't want to do a nonprofit. So years and years went by, and Jim Henry, the late Jim Henry, bless his soul, was really insistent that he really, really, really wanted more people to have neurotherapy. And so he put me together with his foundation, I guess at the time, director, right?
Yeah.
And we began to start looking and thinking about how this might evolve. And all in during that time, Steve also, I had, I said, I worked with one of his family members, and he called me randomly one day and said, Allison, I think more people need this. I was also seeing another family from Denver City, and they were closing their foundation and said, we love what you do. We'd love to give you a piece of this money because we want to pass it on to people doing good work. So God speaks to me in 3 times. And when he speaks to me 3 times, that's when I can't ignore it anymore. And so through really the Henry Foundation is where we started with looking for places to do what we do. And we, at the same time, Mark, at the time, now it's called Spectrum of Solutions, they started, Spectrum of Solutions was meant to be a collaboration of different kinds of therapies for kids on the spectrum. If you've ever been around or near a family who has those kinds of challenges with autism and spectrum disorders and things like that, you know it is a lot of therapy. They need occupational therapy. They need speech therapy. They need music therapy. They need, health care. They need psychotherapy. And they didn't know it, but they also needed neurotherapy. So long story short, we ended up putting an office in Spectrum of Solutions just as a project to see if Archway Outreach is what it became, could be viable. Holy moly. Yeah. So it definitely became big.
Okay, so let's back up just a second. So let's talk neurotherapy. What is neurotherapy? And I want to sort of make the distinction, if possible. Again, I'm no biologist, neurobiologist. I'm no Huberman, even though we might be the same muscular tone. But
Yes.
is neurotherapy also known as neurofeedback therapy? Are they one and the same?
I love this conversation
Okay.
because there are a lot of questions about that. So I won't take you back too far, but understanding and getting into the biology of the brain goes back actually about 100 years ago when the first EEG recording was taken. And from there, we've evolved into learning that we can give the brain feedback and the brain can change itself. And so it all started with what we now call traditional neurofeedback. So neurofeedback, I don't use that term very much anymore because technology has evolved to where it's turned into many, many different things. But neurofeedback traditionally means I'm going to put some sensors on your head. Well, let me back up even still. I need to record your EEG, so which is
Okay.
an electroencephalogram, which is a recording of the brain waves, which is really electricity. And it comes across in sinusoidal waves, and those waves all have morphology and they mean something. They have Greek names: delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. And once we get that recording, then it goes through a whole series of analyses with different kinds of mathematical montages and analyses so that we can understand those brain waves in a better, we call that a quantitative EEG. And I guess I should also tell you, I was a chemical engineer and in manufacturing for 25 years before I got into psychology and the world of counseling. And I went to my first convention, and that's where I was introduced to neurofeedback.
Okay.
And so I brought that into my practice within the first year of having my private practice of counseling. So the engineer in me loves all the science. So it's really a lot of physics. So anyway, we take that QEEG, we really study it. We do a lot of interpretation, and from there of course, we've sat down with you if you were the client or you or whomever and said, what are you noticing? Like, why are you here? What's your story? And you put those two pieces together. You sort of put their life together, the symptoms together with what the brain map says. And then I sit down, do the analysis, and determine, usually there's 2 or 3 different treatment plans. So traditional neurofeedback says, okay, I'm going to put some sensors on your head in a specific place determined by that EEG data, and I am going to try to balance your brain. And what I'm going to have you do in traditional neurofeedback is you're going to watch a screen, maybe a movie, maybe just a video. And if your brain, and I'm over there, master controller, if your brain is doing what I want it to do, right, it's going to, the movie's going to be bright and clear, but it's going to fade or pixelate back and forth.
And that's based on like if your brain is focused?
Yes.
Or not?
Well,
Okay.
focus may be part of the issue, but remember when I look at that brain map and that brain orientation, its behavior, I know what's out of balance compared to healthy, high functioning people the same age.
Okay.
Right? So it's normative base. We also just know that the distribution of the different frequencies within the brain needs to be sort of this way, whatever that is, without going into all of that stuff. And so traditional feedback is truly feedback. So I'm watching something. My brain, all of our brains want that movie to be clear, and we can squint and we can tilt. We'll do whatever it takes for that movie to be clear. But in this particular thing, we just want you to sit there and let your brain do it. So you just let go, and your brain will absolutely drive towards clarity. That's the feedback it's getting, and it does it in milliseconds, right?
Wow.
So I'm wanting it to be exercise. So if you go to the weight room, your trainer is going to say, okay, I want you to use 5 pounds and I want you to do these arm lifts. Okay, that's good. I'm going to add now 5 more pounds. Let's see how you do with that. How about 5 more, right? And he's going to keep challenging you, he or she. And so I do the same thing with my computer. I make it harder as they get better. I want them to be training at about 70% of their capacity.
Now,
That's interesting.
on the topic of watching a movie, this visual of watching the movie, when you say make it harder, what do you mean?
So I have within the software that we use the ability to make that screen be clear easily,
Okay.
or I can challenge you by your brain has to do these certain things in this certain bandwidth at this certain place in order for that screen to clear up.
So,
And I
okay.
always want your brain working.
So it's kind of like going in and out of focus?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
But keep in mind, this is just this is the older
Well,
technology
I'm getting to the newer stuff.
Okay. Okay.
But that's traditional neurofeedback.
Yeah.
And that's where back in the 1950s or 40s, a man by the name of Barry Sturman, who just passed away last year, actually, he was training cats. And he realized that he could get these cats to produce a certain brainwave pattern. And we call that sensory motor rhythm. It's the rhythm that we try to train in brains of people, for example, who have seizures and things like that. And brain injuries and things like that. And so the government came to Dr. Sturman and said, hey, we've got this, hydroxine, which is a component in rocket fuel, and we want to know what's going to happen to the military personnel when they're exposed to that. And he said, sure. And so his test patients were cats. And so he had a group of cats that he had been training, and he said, this might be really interesting to see what happens. So he had his control group, cats that had nothing, and then he had this group of trained cats. And guess what happened when all of the cats were exposed to this rocket fuel?
I mean, I'm going to guess it was a negative experience for them.
For the ones that didn't know how to train their brain.
Oh.
The ones that, because they died of seizures, convulsions. The cats that could create the brain wave to keep their brains from seizing, they were fine.
They just put on their cat gas masks.
They didn't even have to put on cat gas masks.
Oh, they were there.
They just knew how to. They had learned, they had been trained to produce a rhythm in their brain to stay balanced.
Wow.
Crazy, right? So that's kind of where we went, well, golly, if cats can do that with a reward, why can't humans do that? Okay, what's a reward for a human? I want to watch a movie. And I want it to be clear for the client about 70% of the time. That's 70 to 80% of the time is kind of where we want to exercise. So that's where it all started. And then a man by the name of Joel Lubar went to visit Dr. Sturman out in California. Joel's from Florida. He's in hospice. So we're losing all of our founders, which is really hard because we know them all. It's a small community. And he went out there and he said, well, what about these hyperactive boys and girls in school? I wonder if we could do the same thing with them and teach them to calm themselves and, in class. Guess what? It worked. So that's kind of the beginning. And from then they applied it to anxiety and a whole array of things, seizures, brain injuries.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, I can obviously understand like a severe brain injury, right, where you can lose, motor functions or speech functions, but I mean, like, yeah, like, what's the range of, are they called disorders? Like, what's the range of disorders that you're typically like?
I even call them symptoms because it can be a lot of different things.
Yeah,
it's big because I mean, this is your central nervous system, right? I mean, this is your master control, and so and a lot of people say it can't help everything, Allison, and I say, well, I mean, you're technically, your brain is a muscle, and if it's not functioning well, why wouldn't you want to exercise it? Why wouldn't that be healthy as going to the gym and working out your heart, right?
Sure.
And so the spectrum goes literally from people who've got physical brain injuries, and I'll tell you, like autistic folks and ADHD, things like that. That's a physical. Those people were born with their brain wired together that way. So it's very challenging to get that brain to do something it's never done before and connect in a different way. And the things like anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, bipolar, that whole, alphabet soup of things that come along. Those are things that we sort of learn as we go through life. Like you are not born with anxiety and depression. And that's the two big buckets that I use to sort of classify people, because I'm really looking at people when they talk to me as a counselor, as a therapist, as, are you fast energy? Are you slow energy? And again, remember I said it's a lot of physics. And so I know what anxiety looks like in the brain and body, and I know what depression looks like in the brain and body. So those things were learned along the way. Something happened and you got out of balance, right? It's
is it anxiety and depression? Talking about those two are like, is that spawned from traumatic trauma?
Life. Well, I will say yes.
Okay.
The most current sort of philosophy in psychology today is that most everything that we deal with in our life comes from something that happened to us when we were little, right? And I even talk to my clients about their littles, because emotional, we're not sitting in here crying or screaming at each other. We can control ourselves. But little people, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Steve, stop looking at me. Like, that's littles. And when we have these kinds of, abnormal, right? Like, we all have a span of highs and lows that we go through, but when we start clicking too high and too low, that's our littles that start showing up. That's sort of how I've been taught, and that's the current thinking. And that's usually from some sort of trauma. A dog bit my leg when I was running down the street, so I don't like dogs. Why don't you like dogs? Well, when I was 5, I got bit. Well, there's no dog now, so why? It's over there. So all those things develop. So yeah, the easy answer is yes to trauma.
What are the typical symptoms that Archway is dealing with, like, more often than not, I guess?
Well, that is a tricky question because it ebbs and flows. I would say that when we started, we were working mostly with kids' ADHD kind of stuff.
Okay. And you're saying you're born with ADHD?
Yeah, it really is biological. Kids don't just all of a sudden get hyper. They're really kind of naturally that way, and that's what we see in the brain. There are particular patterns that we see in the brain waves that say, oh gosh, okay, we know when your brain is functioning in this pattern, you've likely got this kind of ADHD and those kinds of things. So again, traditionally, the neurofeedback is what we would use with ADHD, and it is effective. And what we're always trying to do in this industry for the last 100 years is we want you to get in it to balance you faster and more effectively. So you're going to ask me this question because everyone does. Does it last?
Does your brain regress?
Right.
Nice.
It can.
Okay.
It can, but usually if your body likes how your brain's, and you don't have trauma in your life and you don't, have some major episode or something, it's going to hold because your brain is going to learn how to balance itself, like we talked about these cats, and it's going to do what it needs to do to go forward. Your body wants to be healthy. Your body wants to heal. You cut yourself, suddenly serum and blood come out, a scab forms, and it heals itself, right? Your brain does the same thing.
It's like muscle memory.
It is. And it's a muscle.
Yeah.
So again, with the goal of we want to get you in and out faster, right? We want to be more effective. People don't want to come in and wait a year. Well, if you've got autism or on the spectrum somewhere, sensory processing disorder or something like that, it's probably going to take you more than a year because we're changing fundamentally a lot of things about you.
Yeah.
A lot of those kids have comorbid anxiety. You can't trust yourself. I've studied all week for a test and I couldn't spell come here, and these kids the anxiety just begins to develop. Again, that comes on top of. So we have to sort of begin to peel away the layers. And so it can take a very long time to do that.
Okay, so are you still to this day? I just want to make sure that you're still connecting the EEG electrodes to somebody's head, right?
Yeah.
And having them focus on something. So
not always.
Oh.
That's the evolution.
Okay.
So that's traditional.
Okay.
So today, neurotherapy includes more of using neurostimulation devices. Sounds fun, right?
TikTok.
So this is where people will come in. People will come in and say, "I brain zap," right?
Oh,
Yeah.
brain fog and brain zap. Yeah.
No, I used to jokingly say, call it brain zapping, and they don't like that phrase.
Well-
no, it has a
because there
probably-
is no
But there's a
zapping. It's
history of
very subtle.
electroconvulsive therapy,
Right.
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
That is 800 milliamps applied to the brain for people who understand that nomenclature. We're using about 1 milliamp,
Okay.
maximum 2.5 milliamps. So you're going to kind of feel it, but you might not.
Okay. It's
Right.
not like electroshock therapy.
It is not
They don't put
electroconvulsive
the
therapy.
it's not the mouth guard and the asylum type of thing from the movies, right?
We don't
Okay.
tie anybody down.
Eyes held open.
Yes. Okay. There's no.
Not even close.
Got it.
Not
All right.
even close. So that we usually, have that conversation first. But what it does include are very old known technologies like transcranial direct current stimulation, alternating current. So direct current just means current goes in and out.
Mhm.
Alternating means it's some sort of either sine wave, square wave, triangular wave is going to be applied to your brain, which again, a lot of times we have to disrupt the brain a bit to get it to come back the way we want it to be, rebuild it. So we also have a series of different noises. You guys might know about noise. There's white noise, which is basically random noise. It's not organized. There's pink noise. There's brown noise. There's also purple and blue and other colors, but pink and brown are we're using those slopes of noise now. Again, it gives the brain an awful lot of information, and then the brain organizes that. Pink noise is actually 1 over F, which is 1 over frequency, which is 1 over, it's the natural distribution of noise just in the world. And then brown is another iteration. It's 1 over F squared. So it's very organized. The brain can understand it. It can take in that information and give itself what it needs. Alternating current, for example, we would give like 13 to 15 hertz. That's that SMR rhythm, right? So if you've got a brain that's behaving erratically, we want to give you something that's going to help you soothe itself. And it may sound silly, but anytime the brain is happening, if something is, the brain waves are behaving erratically, it's almost like it's having a seizure. And a seizure really is just a disruption in that normal pattern. So SMR is always a really great rhythm to give. We also give pulsed electromagnetic field. And if you guys have been out in the technology health world at all, PEMF is all the rage. It is, there are frequency Bibles that are hundreds of pages. Everything on earth is frequency. And, we think that this couch is solid, but truly it is a compilation of elements from the periodic table, which are just really protons, electrons, and neutrons.
I've been reading a lot about that. Like polyesters are really low frequency. Like linen is the highest frequency,
See,
and it
look
like
at you.
really affects like the way your body functions and your
Yes.
brain. It's fascinating to me.
It's fascinating when you can program exactly the frequency you want to give the body
Yeah.
and do something like reduce inflammation. Or
Polyesters in everything.
well,
Except
carbon's in everything.
Yeah.
But again, we like to apply PEMF to the body. So we may combine noise, alternating current, and frequency to the brain all at the same time. We may do square waves to the brain and frequency to the belly. We may do it to your knees. We may do it to your shoulder. We may do current from here to your shoulder. We may do it from the top of your head to the base of your spine. That's why I say today's neurotherapy, it's just huge. We also do light therapy. You've heard of far infrared, near infrared, red light. There are programs where we take light of different frequencies. So we would see that as different colors and apply it to the body in a certain pattern, and it can help to integrate reflexes. You know, when you hear about babies crawling before they walk, there's a whole series of about 19 or 20 reflexes that we need to integrate before we can really function well. And a lot of the kiddos that come in that can't really, that they don't have a lot of self-control. Again, the name of the game in neurofeedback is self-regulation.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't regulate themselves. And so if we can help to integrate some of these reflexes through light, then they can begin to control their body and sit in class and walk or talk or some of these things.
Wow.
So there's the light therapy.
Yeah.
You know, there are different kinds of metronome kinds of things that we can do.
All these things feel somewhat militarized to an extent. I hear EMF, and I'm thinking like that's how they're going to
Put
take
a P
down.
in front of it.
Okay,
EMF.
all right. Then I heard SMR, and I'm like ASMR. I love those videos. But okay, so
All the
I
acronyms.
understand the ADHD side of it. Like coming in and getting these sessions, you said like this is not like
one
3
time.
sessions thing.
No.
Like to your point, like I can't go to the gym 3 times and all of a sudden I'm jacked.
That's it.
Right. So that
You
makes
got it.
total sense. I wish it was the case, but it's not.
Me too.
Outside of the actual therapy, is there something that you can do outside of neurotherapy to keep that sort of going? Like, what does the average person do that just to keep themselves sort of regulated or keep their brain in balance?
And that's a bigger conversation, right? And the other thing that really needs to be said is, and this is just, again, being the engineer that I was for a very long time,
Yeah.
in psychology, you know, we have these big research studies and what do you do? And they have this large group, you know, we all had to do a thesis or whatever. Really, there's only an N of 1. Ryan, you're only you. Steve, you're only you. I'm only me. So whatever's going to work for you
Mhm.
isn't necessarily going to work for Steve, right?
So it's not the YouTube videos of wake up at 4 a.m., immediately go cold plunge, immediately
But those
meditate.
things can be helpful.
Sure. Okay.
So again, that's why it's a larger conversation with people. But one of the very first questions I'll ask anybody is, tell me how you sleep. Because and they'll go like, oh, well, you know, I can fall asleep, but I can't stay asleep. Okay, that's information for me.
Okay.
I sleep maybe 3 hours, and like beyond that, I can't. And then there's the god awful answer. I take Xanax to sleep. I'm like, oh, benzodiazepines, in my opinion, based on what it does to your brain, just don't like them.
Yeah.
I can tell you terrible stories about benzos that I've seen in brains. So sleep is very, 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 I could use about 1,000 varies.
That's foundational right there.
Foundational. Okay. And I will, and what we notice is, again, I've been doing this for about 15 years now, so I've got lots of experience with different people. The one thing that people know, I try not to like put thoughts in their mind because I want them to tell me what they're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most common things they begin to experience in the very beginning is, you know, I'm sleeping like a lot more. I had a person the other day that sleeps 3 hours a day. It's a current client. And they came in and said, so tell me, you know, we've been doing this a little while. Tell me, are you noticing anything? I think I'm sleeping about an hour and a half more every night.
Wow.
And I said, okay, what do you think about that? And they said, well, a lot of people don't think that's a lot, but I only sleep 3 hours. So like I've 50% more sleep for me is like my body notices.
Yeah.
And this is a PTSD client who has an awful lot of health issues on top of that. So sleep for a lot of kids, for example, on the spectrum or with ADHD, but kids in general, what do they eat? You know, my worst nightmare is the parents come in and go like, yeah, well, he'll only eat chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese. And I'm like, well, that's not really food.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to supplement this child? What are you doing to give that brain the fuel it needs to move, right? Parents who don't want to make those kinds of changes, if you're not healthy and you go to the gym and you want to be buff and you keep eating chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese, probably
right. It's counterproductive, if anything.
You're just not going to get there. So, and then we talk about their medications. Like, I'm not a doctor. None of the people at Archway are doctors, and so we can't tell you what to do with your medication. But people have come to us and said, I don't want to be on that benzo. I tried to get off of it. I have seizures every time I try to get off of it. We can begin to help the brain regulate itself so that they can pull themselves off medication. And so that is another thing. Addiction, same thing.
With the care of their doctors.
With
awareness.
they do that. Them and their doctor, the
She always
client and their
mentions
doctor
that, so I
work
just-
through
Makes
that.
sense. I mean, I'm sure like the healthcare system will probably not like that too much, but
Well, that's why it's
The
not
farm-
covered by insurance.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
now you know why there's a nonprofit piece.
Gotcha.
So when people came to me and said, we want you to have this, well, if you do the math, I haven't done it recently, but it's about, are you ready? It's about $8,000 a year.
Okay.
If you come every week, once a week, and you have 2 brain maps a year, that's about $8,000-ish.
So then it's just a matter. I mean, obviously,
And insurance doesn't
we're talking about
cover
a
it.
child. You know, it's based on their parents bringing them in. I understand that part, but for the adult, right? Like, I'm a person who is on medications that I hate taking medications.
You bet.
And I only started taking them a few years ago, and I feel like, yes, I can see the effects of it, but I also don't want medication to be a crutch, I guess.
You can't believe how often I hear that.
Yeah.
And because I'm just like, I don't even know what's in this thing, and and I'm not super, educated about.
Yeah.
I'm not a scientist, right?
Right.
I was going to go back to the aspect of, okay, so you talked about like nutrition, things like that, right? So basically feeding your brain, nurturing your brain with sleep and things like that. So this is obviously going to be a hot topic, but I mean, we're talking about parents with kids. Like, what are the effects on these things, these phones and social media and things like that? And I mean,
well, that's where the statistics come in, right?
Okay.
And the pandemic really, we had this major step change in the more kids were in those tools. I mean, you've seen the movies and stuff where they won't even, the people who develop those platforms won't even let their children on them.
right.
Mhm.
So, what we know, I have a son, right? He's 25 years old, and listen, since he was 4 years old, he had a GameCube. He is very skilled with video games. He's brilliant. And he's also a masterclass shooter with shotguns, trap skeet, sporting clays, the whole thing. So long story short, we know in what I do that when you're playing an active, participating video game, this is all science. This is not me just like, making this up. When we look at the brain there, it most closely, a person playing a video game, and I'm not just talking like Candy Crush. I'm talking like an interactive, like all these games these boys play together.
They're
Like
dialed
the
in.
Fortnite.
They're dialed, they're going fast.
Very
These are
intricate.
ADHD kids, and suddenly they can sit for 12 hours.
Right.
That's all by design. So when we look at a brain on video games, I call it junking out, and we most closely match it to other brains behaving this way. It most closely matches a brain on cocaine.
Wow.
And so if you know gamers, they'll play for a long time, and then they are just like someone coming off cocaine. They're grumpy. They don't want to talk to you. They're tired. It's terrible.
They probably had a bad Call of Duty session, though. You know what I mean?
wiped
Like,
out, yeah.
if you're doing well, you're pretty happy.
Or even if they had a good one.
yeah.
So the test I gave to my son, the reason I tell you sort of that backstory is when he was in high school, I would say, look, kiddo, it's affecting your brain. I know you can't see it. I get that. I totally understand it. But I think I have a way that I can show you that it makes a difference. And he said, well, fine. And I said, I wanted you to go out and shoot around a sporting clays after you've played as much gaming as you want. And let's see if you can hit in the 90s out of 100 like you always do. And he said, you got it.
He's like, this is the best day ever.
This is the best thing ever. And I said, you just go junk out. And he did. He was going to show me. And he played. I don't even want to tell you how long that boy played. And that afternoon, we went out and he shot a 64.
Wow.
And
It feels like eye fatigue and things. I mean,
you can't, your brain is going at a speed you can't regulate yourself. It is on cocaine. Worse yet, now he's not on cocaine. He's in the after effects of it.
Yeah.
So he can't concentrate. He can't see things well. He can't stay calm. And of course, the worse his scores are, the more anxious he's getting, the more emotional he's getting,
Mm-hmm.
right? The little guy shows up, right? He's just mad as can be at me. And I said, I'm only doing this because I want you to see that if you have something important in your life to do, like when he went to college and you're going to take an exam, you may want to lay off the video games before that exam. You may want to lay off when you have really tough classes or an interview or something like that, because you are different and you see with your own physical body, you can't overcome it,
Mm-hmm.
not without time. So what I tell parents is, look, for every hour they play, they need to take an hour break, and
Okay, so just
never
regulate.
really let them play more than an hour and a half, right?
Hmm.
It's an addiction. The brain loves it. It wants more of it. It feels good. I've never done cocaine, but they tell me it's awesome.
It's a
Right?
dopamine hit, right, that you get from it?
Yeah.
Just like anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
So to your point with medication, so I you don't have to share with me what it is, but typically let's just pretend it's a person who has anxiety and they come in and they say, I'm on Klonopin or I'm on Xanax, the benzos, or they can come in and say, I'm on Wellbutrin or Lexapro. And there's lots of them that I understand why they work. Like, I'm not anti-drug, but I'm with you, Ryan. If I could not take medication, and I don't, I would prefer that. I would
Mhm.
prefer to live life's highs and lows and not be stuck in a. I was on birth control at one point in my life, and I felt like it just had me trapped right here, right? And it wasn't meant to change my, mood,
Yeah.
but I think it flattened everything, right? When I got off birth control, it was like, oh my gosh, there are really funny days, and oh my gosh, there are really
Mm.
bad days. So remember, medicine is chemical energy. What I do is mechanical energy, right? Still frequency, still affecting your body. Those medications, for most of us, they go to your whole body. Like, they don't just go just to your brain right here where you need it. They go everywhere. So a lot of people who take some of these medications, right, now their libido's gone, or now their stomach hurts, and so we get these kids that went in for ADHD. Well, that's a stimulant. Well, now their stomach hurts. Okay, now you're going to take something for your stomach. Well, that made my heart hurt. Well, now I have joint pain. And people come in with this whole evolution of medications. I had a client come in one time. This is the most unbelievable story ever. And I know you're not going to believe me. I didn't believe it. This person was taking, are you ready? 15 pain medications prescribed.
Good Lord.
Do you think this person was functioning well?
No.
And I said,
Wow.
are we ever going to, you and your doctor's ever going to consider maybe stopping some of these if they're not working? I think we have a problem.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to say that we've worked for years, and this person is completely med free
Nice.
and living life and just a whole different human being. So people come in and to your point, how do you support outside of the therapy? It's working with your doctor. It's eating the right things. It's, I really say food and exercise are some of the best medicine that we have. And we're just in a culture that just doesn't value it as much. I think we do today a lot more with all the organic stuff and things like that. And to your point, EMFs are everywhere. That cell phone, even if you weren't playing a game on it, I've told you my kids are young. I have a 27-year-old, 25-year-old, and where do they carry their phones?
In their pockets.
What is down there?
Your good
reproductive
parts.
organs.
Yeah.
And that is not a
Yeah,
good
I've
thing.
heard that part. And then nobody talks on the phone anymore, but you're putting that to your head. So
All
I
that's
get
real. Microwaves are real.
it. Okay.
It is all out there, and our bodies are trying to deal with it. We're trying to regulate and stay healthy inside of it. Just the frequencies that are in food today, like wheat today, we're all allergic to it. Why? Because it's not the same wheat as it was, when our grandmothers were making bread, right?
Mm.
So all of that is frequency, and our bodies are just trying to understand it, trying to incorporate it, trying to be healthy outside of it. And so sometimes we just need a little push. And so these ADHD kiddos or these autistic kiddos who can't speak, for example, who can't go to school, we can begin to teach their brain and teach them how to sit still and how to speak and how to understand. I mean, there's nothing, I can't describe to you how it feels to sit with a child who I've seen for 7 years, and for the first time, we're having a conversation,
Yeah.
right? And to be able to be a part of that evolution, or a child that came in on medication because the child would sleep 3 hours every 3 days. And suddenly we
Yikes.
realized that this child now, I started with him when he was 4. He's now at Texas Tech University.
Wow.
I mean, fetal alcohol syndrome child, and is just thriving. There's nothing I can. Steve always says this is the favorite part of talking about this, that he always says he loves the most.
Yeah, I like to hear, that a family can now go to dinner with their whole family. They don't have to leave a parent and a child at home, because now that child can, I don't want to use the word behave, but can behave
Self-regulate.
properly
Yeah.
in public, and now the family can be together. It's like, wow.
We take all of that for granted.
I see
Yeah.
all the brain maps and stuff like that she shares with people, and it's so visual and you see it. But man, to hear those families,
Yeah, but it's just a
happy
sense of
again.
relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and the
Like,
things
just
we
some
take for
normalcy.
granted
Yeah.
is normal families.
Yeah.
My family's not normal.
and
Are any of
COVID
them?
COVID
Close.
was really bad on brains,
Yeah.
right?
How so?
The COVID fog, right? Whatever that craziness that virus did to all.
You're saying getting COVID.
Well, I never had COVID,
Okay.
right? But COVID exposure was causing people to say, I can't think like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
We have a tool that, right, we can get your brain balanced again. And it didn't take long to get rid of COVID fog for most people.
Yeah.
And we collaborate with doctors in town, and they kept sending us tons of people. And I said, time out.
Mm.
So there's all kinds of things in our environment that we get exposed to, and things like that can cause us to be off balance. And so, gosh, I mean, I could go on and tell stories and stories, and everybody needs something different.
Sure.
And I might start somewhere with you and end up completely different because you've evolved or it's not working. So again, that's why we have so many systems available for us, because we eventually try to figure out, how are you going to respond? How are
Mhm.
you going to respond?
And at first, when I first was learning more and more about it, it almost sounds like snake oil. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking before, because it sounds like it can fix too much.
Yeah.
But if your brain's controlling everything and you find the way to normalize, to stabilize and regulate the brain,
Mm-hmm.
well, then really what can't you fix?
Yeah.
Okay. So on that point though, so I don't want to use the term. So you've got the term of sort of stabilizing and balancing, and then maybe on the other side there's the word cure, right? So I want to be careful with that word.
Yeah,
I guess.
you can't
right?
use that word.
So on that point, ADHD, I think lives in a certain space. But let's talk about. I would think some of the big boys, right? We're talking now, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia.
Okay, so, and Steve knows this. Parkinson's, yes. Dementia, no. Now, I would say that dementia is probably one of dementia and seizures are the two areas we're very effective with seizures. Dementia, Alzheimer's, what we know through experience, and there's people all over the world doing this. Photobiomodulation, red light therapy, or certain frequencies of light, 1070 nanometers, for example, have shown some progress in reversing the memory issues. Okay. Now, what we seem to be finding is, if the decline is a line, going down like that in memory, that if we intervene at some point, we can hold that steady where there's no longer any decline. So if you could imagine a line like this, and we hold it steady, when we stop the therapy, they go straight back to where the decline would have been had we not interfered at all.
Oh, okay. It's a rapid.
So, for example, my father, he was experiencing dementia and in his 50s. And I said, hey, there's someone in your area. Go see this person. And he did for 3 years. And at the end of 3 years, he was kind of missing some appointments and things like that. And he was just really not dedicated to it. And I said, I had a conversation like, Dad, if you don't have to find any value in this, then he goes, I really don't think it's helping. I said, okay, then don't go. I mean, it's your choice.
Yeah.
Don't go. Within the year, he lost his job. And he was a realtor, so he was Mr. Socialite, right? He was the president of the realty board, right? All these things, and he couldn't drive. I mean, talking to him on the phone was like, ask me a question, same question. You guys have all been around dementia people, and just lost his life within a year.
Yeah.
I mean, not literally, but so then he lived for another, 10 years just in this terrible condition. So that's what I will tell you about dementia. It's not good news. I would love to be able to say, like, come on in. Tinnitus is another thing, ringing in the ears. That's very, very difficult. I have not had success with it. People want to say, how about tinnitus? I'm like, it would seem like, because it is a brain thing,
Yeah.
it would seem like we could help. We just have not found the magic button for that.
What about with so my mom has dementia and she's in pretty late stages of it, but the anxiety that she has, so she's always like
that we can help.
Okay.
That we can help. And the people that we have worked with, older, I have a set of older people that I see, people I would say that are in their 70s. And they come in and what they notice is their temperament is better. They're not as grouchy, right? Their fear isn't quite as bad, which is the anxiety.
Yeah.
It's terrible to have dementia. It is, we've all sort of woken up at that day and gone like, where am I? Where am I? Imagine doing that like every minute.
Yeah. Like for her, she's nonverbal. She's in a wheelchair. Like, could we still bring her in and do all that?
Well, just know that just because, and I know this because of autism kids, they teach me so much. Just because they don't respond to you doesn't mean it's not going in there.
Right. Yeah.
They're not brain dead. They're just, they've lost the ability. This is the story of Steve's family. They've just lost the ability to communicate. And I really, if I could ever say I hate anything, I really hate dementia.
Yeah.
It's just so prevalent and it's so difficult.
Yeah.
People with brain injuries.
So in that case, brain injuries. So you've obviously learned something, right? But you've lost that ability, but you can essentially relearn it, right? Can you learn something that you've
maybe?
Can I learn Mandarin?
Yes, of course.
Through
no
neurotherapy?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I can't. So the other thing I really should say is these tools do not diagnose anything.
Okay.
Right? I'm not. When you come in and you say I have anxiety, I'm like, that's good to know because that's something we can track to see if the therapy is effective. But the truth is, I'm really just looking at your brain. My goal as the therapist, as the neurotherapist, is to balance your brain. My goal as the psychotherapist is to talk about it and let's process it, right? So the neurotherapist in me says, oh, that's great. You're missing your frontal lobe. Chances are that will reorganize, but it might not.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that happen in your frontal lobe, right? I've had at least 2 clients who've lost their frontal lobe, a portion of it, not ever really able to repair something that's not there, right?
Right.
Like
It's
if I
hard to
cut your leg
normalize
off,
what's gone.
Because that's the part of the brain that function. That function takes care of that function.
Yeah.
It's not there anymore, so it's not like the brain goes, "Oh, I'll just put it over there."
well,
then.
an even bigger story to that is that it's not just that portion of the brain does one thing. The brain works in networks. This is what we know. So your car is a network. If you have a low tire, your car is not going to drive well, right? Until you get that tire repaired in whatever way it needs it. So if I lost my frontal lobe, and it's not there, I take the tire off my car, it's never going to drive properly because it's physically not part of the network anymore. Can the rest of the network do some things? Yes. Well, no.
Not optimal.
Not optimal.
Got it.
So again, people always say, what is that part? Oh, that they'll look at the brain map. Oh, what does that part of the brain do? I'm like, nothing by itself. Right.
Yeah.
Nothing by itself. So it's not that, oh, because that's there, this is what the problem, that we can't do that. It's part of, and then there's hundreds of networks in the brain. It's really interesting to study all of that and to see how they all work real time. We have technology where we can watch those networks work. I mean, that's part of the brain training, is to get every part of your brain online.
And that's how you two met, correct?
Yeah. So, Steve, you want to tell that story?
Sure. My wife, about 13, 14 years ago, slipped and fell in our kitchen, had a bad brain injury. It was just impact, closed head injury. There were 2 bleeds, and the only way they could stop the bleeds was to remove tissue. And so they cut out a section of her right frontal lobe and her right temporal lobe. And so then we spent a straight year in rehabs and brain rehabilitation centers, ICUs, I mean, the whole bit. you know, coma.
And I met Steve via phone during that time, and he's saying, "What do you do?" Ryan, like, being very curious, like you. I don't know. She's got a shunt. I mean, could it, Allison, blah blah blah. And I said, until you're ready. So keep with the
Right.
story.
And so that's what then I started looking for that silver bullet. I tried everything. If I could have found a voodoo doctor, we would have done voodoo. I don't think there's any voodoo in Midland,
No.
but I'd looked for everything. And this one, I just loved the science behind it. And Allison was awesome. She did so much research too, and trying to figure it out, because there is a metal shunt, magnetic metal shunt that is in her head. And it's like, what's that going to do to it? Well, there's not a lot of statistics on that.
Yeah.
And to be fair, we didn't really see the progress we hoped for, but it's because it was missing.
Mm-hmm.
But then I went ahead and did the therapy, because after, probably at that point, we were probably at the 1.5 year mark. And, I was raising a 4-year-old little girl and an 18-month-old son. That's how old they were when she fell.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Call that trauma.
yeah. And so I was functioning, but I was not
Functioning.
Yeah, I'd lost emotion. I was just getting it. I was getting it done.
Yeah. You're an
And
autopilot.
and so I asked her. I tried all the different antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, and I got little relief, if anything else. And I don't mean to dog medicine. For me, it didn't help. There was side effects that it made it worse. But then I did the therapy, and I don't remember if I did it 6 to 8 times, but I'll never forget.
It's more than that, probably.
There was someone in the. I would reach out to people. I would kind of hear their story, and I'd reach out to people, because I had learned a lot through this process. So when they were in the beginning of their process, I'd reach out, and this one woman was telling me that she was, that I was saying, please have your husband call me, and she said he won't. He's too proud. She started crying, and I started crying, and there we are in the middle of the foyer at the hospital, crying my eyes out. And I thought, come on, I'm way too macho for this. Just kidding. I really am not that guy. But I really, it impacted me. And I was like, 2 months ago, I could have done that. I could have gone through that process. But my kids didn't need a robot dad. They needed someone with emotion. And I even called Alice and left her a voicemail. She was probably in session saying, damn it, you fixed me. I'm human again. But I mean, so that's when I realized this is so much better than what I had been offered other ways.
Mm-hmm.
And
so that's how we met.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So then he starts sending people to me, and he's bumping into the people at the hospital as he's going through this rehabilitation with his ex-wife. And over a period of time, again, he's just like, Allison, more people need this. And again, the thing that gets hard is the money. And that's why outreach became what it did. People, it's not covered by insurance. Our professional organization for neurofeedback are working very hard. It's insurance. So
yeah,
I can't even tell you how complicated it is. And then you're dealing with a whole plethora of doctors and all their codes, and we're this tiny little bitty piece of it. So we don't get a lot of attention, but it's hard to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
It's just hard. And the people who I train with and learn from tell me, you need to be seeing people 2 and 3 times a week. And I'm like, first of all, there's so many people who want to come. We don't have room for that. And two, I don't know that people can afford that. That's a lot of money very quickly. And some people do. So with the help of this nonprofit, it really just gives people, and we don't pay for all of it because I'm big in you need to invest in your own therapy.
Yeah.
And so that it pays either 50% or 70% of the, so like insurance of the fees. And because we already had the profit business running and operating, really all the nonprofit does is pay for the fees for the clients. It doesn't pay for the electricity. That's all taken care of by the profit side of the business.
That's one of my favorite parts about it is all the money that we take in as the nonprofit. I mean, there's a very small portion that might go to some training and a little bit of administrative costs.
Sure.
But the rent, the lights, the insurance, everything else is taken care of. The insurance might be paid by the nonprofit, but just because it needs to. But it's every dollar we take in, it's not operational.
And I think it's important to say too.
Straight to the
you made me
clients.
think about this. We are all board certified, not certified. So we didn't just go take a 40-hour class and we got some little certificate.
Not we, but they.
There are four of us, and we're board certified, which requires examination and mentorship and didactic training and constant continuing education to maintain our certification. I also am board certified in QEEG and actually get to sit as the board president for the International Association. So that's kind of cool to be able to be so influenced. I mean, Joel Lubar, the man I told you, one of the founders, he was on our board. Barry Sturman on our board. All of these people on our board. So I am constantly being led and taught by the people who built this business. And their experiences is what gives me encouragement to do all the things, Ryan, you've been asking about. Like, so what about dementia? What about these things? PTSD, yes. To work with someone who, for example, let's just make make up something. Let's just say someone came back from Afghanistan, and I can convince them to continue therapy, and I can convince them to possibly do EMDR therapy, which is another piece of this that we've not talked about. And EMDR stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. We don't really do the eye movement at Archway. We have other ways of stimulating you bilaterally, but it's about vibration, again, frequency. And that's a very, very, I could sit here for a whole nother hour and tell you about EMDR therapy. And again, we're all certified in that, so that's a big thing. And to get someone in the military to come and let me look at their brain, show them that they're not doing something wrong, that their brain is not balanced, and be able to sit with them then and say, let's get you relaxed, let's get you calm, and then let's do some trauma therapy.
The military doesn't provide this? I don't mean to bring up any controversies, but I mean...
Maybe somewhere.
Okay. All right.
Now, the
Hopefully they're
VA
doing it
hospital,
somewhere,
in
learning.
fact, the VA hospital called me this week
Yeah.
and said, hey, would you guys be interested in providing EMDR therapy for our veterans? And I'm like, where am I going to put all these wonderful, deserving people, and how God's going to have to work this out, right? My theme word for 2024 is surrender. If God wants it to happen, it's going to happen. But they don't really do it. They don't. Our veterans don't get care, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I love these men and women. They're amazing. Their stories are beautiful.
They've done so much for us.
And they won't tell you.
Yeah.
They won't tell you. So working with veterans is special. When I can get them to come and sit. And I think this is where God, in my story, again, working with men, as an engineer, predominantly men, for 25 years, I enjoy them very much. I enjoy male clients. I get them, so to speak. I've worked with hundreds of them. And so I love that population to come in. And the cool thing is I'll just tell you a story. I had years ago, and this poor veteran he'd lost his wife, he lost his children because his behavior was so bad. He could not keep a job, so he was in poverty. his doctor, I don't know where this doctor was. It wasn't local. Somewhere in the VA said, you have to go see this person. You need neurofeedback, and you've got to tell somebody your story. And it was a god-awful story. And as we began to do a certain protocol, I have hundreds of protocols that I can use. And for this person, it got to where he would be sitting there and we'd be talking. And at about 20 minutes in, because I'm always watching the system, at about 20 minutes, he'd go, Allison, no talking. Shh. So I would just say, okay. And the next time he'd come in, I'd say, okay, what's happening when you're shushing me? And he said, I have peace like I haven't felt in years. And he goes, it is so wonderful. I'd give anything to have that, and I want it to last.
Mm-hmm.
I need it to last. So again, we're training, right? So he comes in and we do it week after week after week. And the next thing I know, he calls and says, I don't think I need therapy anymore. And I said, okay, are you sure? He's like, well, my wife and I are talking, and I had dinner with my kids last night. And last week I got a job, and I really think I'm going to be okay. I've stayed. I've not run out the door the minute the boss corrected me. Here's this wonderful person who has served me and all of us and had no way to function. And he was a wonderful, wonderful person and could not do it on his own. And to give somebody back that ability, I have no words for that. And I just happen to be blessed to have this set of tools. Here's the other thing. There's nobody else that's doing this. Nobody in Lubbock, nobody in Abilene, nobody in San Angelo.
Wow.
We see people from El Paso. We see people from the Valley. We see people everywhere. The closest you're going to get is Dallas, Austin, or Houston.
Mm-hmm.
I think that holds true for a lot of things, right? Like
Well, yes.
bigger metros.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people say to me all the time, what are you doing here?
Mm.
And I'm like, well, you're going to have to ask God that question because I have no idea.
He
And
asked me that too. Turns out.
Why would you
Where-
come here?
Where are you from? I've got two more questions, and I wanted to talk about sort of like the future of where this is, the technology. You're a technology guy,
Yeah.
Steve. So what are your thoughts on Neuralink? Because Elon's out here talking about maybe curing. I don't know if curing. Don't sue me, but obesity and schizophrenia and like some big things, and it only costs $50,000 to get this thing planted in my head. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, first, it's real. They're doing it.
Yeah.
And the big 5 technology companies have invested with China. And we know this because they're asking for our EEG data,
Oh, wow.
which no one I know is giving it to them.
I wouldn't.
What we give all of our rest of our information to China every day.
And so this is a very interesting thing that they're going to do. It's a brain net. So even with some of the neurosurgeons that I work with in the neurofeedback industry, for tinnitus specifically, they have this little, inject a syringe. Instead of opening your brain up and putting in a circuit boards now can be flexible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of rolled up in a syringe, and you can inject it in the brain where you want it for tinnitus, and it'll roll out, and then this small little thing can be there, and they can help your tinnitus. Okay, so let's just take that up a scale.
Please.
Now I can put this bigger thing in your head, and it'll just roll this brain net out over all of your brain. And if I can cure your schizophrenia, what a great idea. I would love that. Wouldn't you love that?
Sure.
No more schizophrenia. Would help the homeless population by probably 75% or more. But what else can they do? I tell you what, today, I want you to be angry,
Mm-hmm.
and I want you to fight for me.
Okay.
But tomorrow, I don't need you to fight, so you're going to go be the best husband on the whole planet.
That's crazy.
How could I get better at that? Right, Terra?
Right.
But
Best
you
husband.
see the thing,
So
because
they
we
can just
know
control you.
when we stimulate certain things, we can change your behavior and the way the neurons fire and how those networks link up or don't link up. And so why, just like with AI,
You're susceptible. I right.
AI can
right.
be wonderful.
Right.
AI can be terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean,
And if you trust the world,
well,
why not?
that would be a stretch.
It's
but,
hard.
yeah.
And I just, you can go down to the technology store and you can go buy a brain trainer for ADHD.
Oh, really? At Best Buy?
Ish.
Okay.
And we've bumped into people, and I bump into them all the time. And it's somebody who's got a plug and play system, you know, and the problem is it's built to train a certain way. But what if your brain doesn't need that?
Mm.
Yeah.
What if your ADHD is number 5 and not number 1? And now you're making number 5 worse.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Somebody told me Adderall would work. Would you give that to some kids? Because doctors don't do EEG and QEEG analysis. Some kids get worse with Adderall. Some kids are better, right? Some people are better with Zoloft.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are not, right? So
you have to test it out, and then they have to monitor you.
So
over
if
months,
you've got
things like that.
somebody that's a one-size-fits-all biofeedback, neurofeedback training, I'm just going to tell you that's not what we do. And I would never, ever, ever expose my brain to, and there are systems I will not have in my practice because there's a risk, right? This isn't chicken bones, right? This isn't snake oil. It works. I am going to affect your brain, hopefully. But if I don't know what I'm doing, I can affect your brain maybe negatively. I've had people come to me who've seen other providers of neurofeedback, and their anxiety is far worse than it ever was.
Now you've got this chip in your brain. That's fair. I mean, I understand it could, you can be hacked and things like that. I get that from that perspective. But I mean, I'm also just a huge fan of the Matrix, and I feel like that's where technology is headed.
But if you think about the Matrix, and I love that you brought that up, because remember I said a few minutes ago, everything's frequency.
Mm-hmm.
So the Matrix is really real. It is a matrix.
Go on.
We just have eyes. We just have prisms in our biology to see the world the way we see it. Snakes don't see the world the way we see it.
Okay, fair.
A chameleon doesn't see the world the way that we see it. Right? Whales don't see the world the way we see it. Dogs don't even see the world, right? The way we see it. Their color spectrum is different. So if you could just, again, this is the engineer in me talking, if you could just imagine that you could just see the frequency in your ball cap. If you could just see the frequency in that wall is really fluid.
It's just code.
It's
Right,
just
Steve?
code.
That's right.
Yes.
Zeros
We're
and
living
ones.
in the Matrix.
Yes. And that's the cool thing. Like we all know, people have heard like the bones take the longest in your body, but your bones completely regenerate every 3 years. Slowly, slowly. I tell people when I do neurotherapy properly, it feels like growing hair,
Oh,
right? It's happening.
yeah.
And suddenly you may wake up and go like, I need a haircut. Well, someday people come in and they go, I had a panic attack. And I'm like, oh no, what happened? And they're like, no, it's great because when I first started seeing you, I was having 3 a day and I haven't had one in months. Oh my gosh, it's working. They didn't understand that. The 3 months it was working, right? So when you change things slowly and professionally, you get change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really, really cool. So I think that, again, I merge my spiritual beliefs and my, engineering beliefs together, and all things are possible. Now, can I cure things? I don't think I've ever cured anybody because I think that there's really no such a thing. I think that we're all moving through time, and some days we're better and some days we're not.
Just trying to get back in balance.
You betcha.
Well, it's like the saying, like you're doing the best with the tools that you have, but it's more like this is providing new tools and teaching you how to use those tools.
That's it. And when you have a balanced body, you're more likely to be able to learn. We know through the research that IQs and achievement improve, not because they got smarter, but because they could learn after neurofeedback or neurotherapy. right? You're more relaxed. You can perform better on tests. You can listen better in class. Kids hate it. They hate it. They're like, ugh, I hate neurofeedback. I'm like, why do you hate it? I'm like, because I pay attention now and my friends are trying to get my attention and they don't like me anymore because I'm paying attention to the teacher. It's awful. And the parents are going like,
Thank you. Yeah.
right? So it's really interesting, right? When teenagers are the biggest challenge because they don't really understand a lot about.
I'm 45 and I don't understand. Yeah.
I'm 60 and I think I'd be in the same pile with you, but their self-reports are just terrible because they don't understand that they're actually better.
Yeah.
Because they're having no pain. Like they're not getting in trouble with their parents. Their grades are better, so they're not getting in trouble with their parents. They're not fighting with their friends. And to them, like, it's not doing anything. I was like this all the time. So
the self-reflection is harder than the outside world
For the-
going like,
for
no, you're
teen.
better.
yeah, the parents are
Yeah.
back there going like, we're going to keep coming.
Yeah.
Right.
I have Christmas cards, right, that come in at the end of the year, and parents are like, you have no idea the difference in our family. And that's part of the nonprofit. You know, they require us to. The foundations that fund us require us to have outputs and things like that. And so we ask for testimonials and we share the different brain maps and how they've changed. And the testimonials are like, you just have no idea, like Steve said, that you have no idea what it's like to not be able to take a family vacation.
Yeah.
You have no idea what it feels like to be the parent whose child can't stay in class.
Mm-hmm.
I can now have a job because my son stays in class.
Yeah.
You know, my daughter now has friendships because she doesn't have social anxiety anymore. You know, I have kids that come in that can't go to school because they've got so much social anxiety. We work with couples, right? And when you get a part of the couple that now can go through their PTSD and we can help them regulate, now the couple can have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I refer to it as the ripple effect, right? And then those people go and say, hey, go call Archway. They've got this amazing set of tricks, and people call and say, what do I need to do? I'm like, I don't know who you are. I have no idea. Let's walk through the process together.
Yeah.
And I can't say enough about, there's 4 of us, and the similarities amongst all of us and our certifications and qualifications are all very, very similar. But each one of us is very different, and so you get a different experience. You always see the same therapist, but Archway has an awful lot to offer in like trying to find the person that fits your vibe. Because if you've ever been to counseling, it's not always a fit.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not always a fit. So, I don't know. It is a really cool tool to have. Is all of this, and if you would have asked the engineer in me all those years ago, would I be counseling? I'd say like, what, are you crazy? There's no way I do this. No way.
Okay, so the engineer. So last question. The engineer, developer, tech nerd, person who's married to a tech nerd.
And who knows, he's been dying to ask this
Oh
question.
my gosh, I can't wait.
From the minute he woke up
I love
this
it.
morning.
Okay, so you talked about the cost being an issue sometime for some people.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about rewiring the brain.
Yeah.
We're talking about technology. The Apple Vision Pro just came out yesterday. Okay, so could the Apple Vision Pro, could there be an app developed? Is there an app being developed? Could you develop an app
You'd be so
that
rich.
people can wear this Apple Vision Pro and sort of read the brain scans and help them with their,
like an in-office thing.
or not? I look at it like this.
Okay, so I'll dream with you.
Please.
So, like, I realize that NASA sent, supposedly, some think it's a conspiracy, sent people to the moon. And that whole bank of computers that did that was probably would fill this building almost. And now we have more than that in that Apple phone. And if there was, and we've all seen the commercials where you put your thumbs on the deal and it'll read up your EKG.
Mm-hmm.
It's on my wrist right now.
There you go. I don't wear those things either.
Uh-oh.
EMF. If you could somehow, maybe you put a brain net in your brain or something. I don't know. Maybe you could wear a scalp device all the time, maybe, that could constantly read your EEG. And you could constantly be given some kind of feedback to say, you need to take 10 deep breaths, or you need water, or warning, 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 your right frontal lobe isn't working right now, or whatever. I don't know how the feedback would come to you.
Sure.
I think you'd be exhausted. It'd be like lifting weights everywhere you went.
The constant notifications and
The constant asking you to change.
well,
and
the
again,
feedback, I guess. Yeah.
And again, would that be optimal to like try to be perfect? Or is it better to have a world where maybe you just got your brain fit, and then you, in your own mind, in your own environment, can decide whether we need to turn the air conditioning up or down, or I need to stop talking,
Right.
or I really need to go give this amazing person who supports my nerdiness a great big hug or a new diamond ring. I mean, I don't know, but
Diamond ring.
Yeah. So I mean,
Cut that part out of this
I mean,
episode.
I think that in a world of technology, sure. I mean, why couldn't that be out there somewhere? To me, again, I think of the fatigue when people train with me, and we don't ever train anyone more than 40 minutes at a time. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Well, the Apple Vision Pro, you can only use it for about 2 hours. This is not a commercial for the Apple Vision Pro, but I kind of want one. And there's like, put it this way, like there's a mindfulness app built in, right?
Mindfulness is great.
To let you sort of meditate and things like that. When you initially came in, I heard this aspect of we hook up EKG, EEGs to your brain, to your head, and then you're watching a movie, and if your brain is out of focus, the vision's out of focus, the movie's out of focus, and the volume might be out of focus too, right?
Sort of like
I
that.
was sitting there going like, this sounds like an app in a year that even if Apple's not developing, maybe Archway's developing. You don't need to.
Well,
you don't need to tell us if
no,
this is
we're
happening
not.
or not. But I don't want any sort of like a legal ramifications here. But I'm sitting there going like, I feel like this is where technology is headed.
Well, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
But again, remember that you wouldn't want your heart doctor just to go like, you know what, you look like you need a quadruple bypass.
Ooh, okay,
Let's just do that. Like, what are you going to do with your Apple eyes to know that you even need that?
Yeah.
Because look, I don't have TikTok, but I know that people will do really silly things just because you say, oh, this is a really great idea.
Like Tide Pod Challenge.
Or other silly things, right? So just because there's an app doesn't mean you need it.
There's not a doctor behind it. There's not a therapist behind it. It's not a professional behind it.
And I'll tell you that I have clients that drive in from Lubbock and other places, and they've said, Allison, would you please open an Archway in Lubbock? Would you please open an Archway in El Paso? Would you please open an Archway in San Angelo? And they're like, I have a PA. I have an NP. They're doctors, really smart people. And I'm like, do they know psychology? And I'm not saying that neurosurgeons and neurologists aren't doing this, because they are, but you're changing. Steve, bear witness to what we were talking about. You're sitting there and all of a sudden your life is different. And if you don't have the tools to like help that person with those changes, it's not necessarily a good thing. So, I mean, it's so complex, right? I mean, I love the idea that you're thinking about. And I think that why in the world couldn't you do it? I mean, literally, I have a program I run. I mean, that could be made into an app. I have people, and there are systems that are home trainers. So you can put the equipment in your house, and I can run it from my house, my office. And so, I mean, it's there. But without a profession, I mean, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I've had a heck of a lot of education about this that I didn't learn in my engineering degree.
Right.
I didn't learn in my master's psychology program. I think to do that with what I know now, I just think it's limited.
Well, I feel like if you're trying to do this by yourself using like the plug and play system you mentioned earlier, or an app within the Apple Vision Pro, that it'd be like watching a YouTube video on how to perform open heart surgery and being like, oh, I could do this.
Yeah.
Oh, you're having chest pains, babe?
Sure.
But
Pass on that. But yes. No, I understand what you're saying, though. It's like the most you're going to get back, the average person, is some sort of data set. But if you don't know if you're not educated to interpret that
Right.
data, right, then you're not necessarily going to know what to do with it. And then at the same time, an app or whatever software could go like, we've read it and you should do this, but that might not actually be the best
Exactly.
course of action for
Exactly.
you. That might,
Yeah.
it
For
might
example,
actually make you worse.
Steve has sat with me a lot.
Yeah.
He sat with me not only as a client, but also as the guardian of a client.
Yeah.
He sat there, with me going through all sorts of different cases. And of course, him being the board president of my nonprofit organization, he and I'll just sit and talk about different things and, what are we going to do and where are we going to go? And I think, right, like it would be tough to do it isolated on an island without some sort of connection.
I'm going to brag for a second about Archway Outreach because all of the therapists are licensed LPCs, licensed
Professional counselor.
There you go. And so not only are they applying neurotherapies, they're also doing psychotherapy. They're talking to these people. They're learning about these people that, so there's a lot of people that want to apply technology to you, but don't have the background to see how it's working. Like some people get fixed and they leave their family, you know, because change doesn't just always give you the improvement you're looking for.
Right.
Here's a perfect example. Kind of, and I'm thinking in this case as we're talking, I saw a client years and years ago, and they wouldn't tell me what it was. They said, I have anxiety. I said, okay. They said, I don't want to tell the story. I said, okay. So every single time this person came in, we would talk about the weather. We'd talk about Christmas. We'd talk about Valentine's. We'd talk about, the weather. And after a course of therapy, they came in one day and said, Allison, I think I'm going to get a divorce. I said, oh, that's big news.
Yeah.
And I said, what brought that about? Well, I've been hit in the head every single day my entire marriage, and I don't think that's going to be good for me anymore.
That was literally?
Literally.
Oh.
And I said, yeah, I think that's a really great choice.
Yeah.
She said, I deserve better than that. I said, and I'm, standing behind her doing the work, listening and going like, holy guacamole.
Yeah.
Like, and there were no words that entire time. It was a safe place for her to get regulated. And when she did, everything cleared up. This is the story that you're talking about. So I needed to be there in that moment.
Yeah.
Right.
When she finally has this clarity to say, I think that's important.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about that? What are you thinking? Like, what's the next step? So to me, I can't imagine. And some people, like I say, have these home trainers. And so there are some clinicians that have techs that set people up and they watch videos. And when you're doing the traditional neurofeedback, you can't talk to them, which is why I don't really do it anymore, because I can't have that conversation. You're having to concentrate and watch that movie, or else I'm just making the numbers be bad. So with the systems that we use today, I get to sit and say, hey, man, what's going on with you? You had a good day? Are you feeling better, worse, tired? And you go like, that wife of mine, she just thinks she's helping me. She's not helping me. And I tell her and she doesn't listen. Like I get to hear that and say, well, tell me more about that. Like it's really curious. I've never heard you talk about that.
Yeah.
It's something new, something changed. So it's not really just plug and play. It matters because it works. And it's super important for you to come in and go like, hey, Allison, I don't know. I saw a man. I'd seen this man for years. He came in. We did the exact same thing we'd done for at least months. And all of a sudden he said, Allison, all of a sudden I feel really terrible. And I said, okay, ripped it all off his head. I said, hold on. I said, are you okay? They said, I really don't think I'm okay. And I said, can you drive? And they said, I don't think so.
Wow.
So I have a therapy table, and I went and put it in one of the other offices, and they went in there and slept for an hour and a half. And I woke him up and I said, Are you okay? Yeah, I think I can drive now. And I said, what happened? Tell me, is there something about you that's different? Well, I just got out of the hospital.
Well,
See, no resources on board.
yeah.
I overdosed the client to
Mhm.
something they'd had dozens of times. So it matters. I need to be there in that moment to say, like, what do we do now? Whoop, stop. What do we do now? We don't drive. We ask all the right questions. So I don't know. To do it yourself, do you have that much self-awareness?
I mean,
I don't know.
I don't. But,
Save the DIY for your home projects.
well,
But if
I
it
mean,
ever comes up, I've got lots of people that develop technology.
I think
They'd
we should.
love
I
to
think
work
we should at
together.
least buy 4 of them this afternoon. There's not an Apple store in Midland, but it
We'll have
is
to
what
go
it
to El
is.
Paso.
And we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway from that part. But I think my brain is blocked a
Yeah.
lot of things to going like I need
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I need that shopping therapy.
Yeah.
But no.
Get it.
So let us.
That's addiction. We work
darn
with
it.
that too.
I was going to ask you about addiction, like smoking or
Yes.
diet, or
Yes.
I mean, I guess there's so many.
So it's not like hypnotherapy, which we don't do hypnotherapy, but a lot of people, want to like stop eating or stop whatever. And again, just like with everything, it's a process.
Right.
So I have people who come in with lots of addictions. And for example, let's just talk about alcohol because it's pretty common. People come in and if you've ever been around anyone who doesn't drink anymore, right? Their dopamine is not where it needs to be. Their body doesn't find joy. It's just really a hard place to be. And they're just agitated and they're anxious. And all they do is think about alcohol. I'd be better if I drank. I'd be better if I drank. Think life would be better. I'd be happier. I'd have more friends. All these things they tell themselves. And they can come in and we can do this. And suddenly they're like, what'd you do?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sleeping. Yeah, that's cool. Great. How's that feel to sleep? Well, it's weird because I wake up and the first thing I don't think about is alcohol. Like, I have coffee and I go like, oh, I hadn't even thought about beer. Wow, that's
Yeah.
new, right? And so when you're balanced, you don't crave these things. You don't go out and buy every new technology. In my world, there's lots of technology. One of my systems costs about, to have all the parts to it, is around $50,000.
$50,000. That's 15
Apple
Apple
Pros.
Vision Pros at
Yeah,
least.
yeah.
Okay.
And we have 5 of those stations. So
all
it's
right.
pretty, and it's changing all the time.
Buying
So
out the store.
if you saw me a year ago, the technology I was using a year ago is different than what I'm using now. So it's always evolving. And so, you have to stay up with the state of technology. And
Yeah.
so there are
Agreed.
people developing things all the time.
I'm excited.
It really is cool.
Yeah, across the board. So how do people get in touch with Archway support, Archway Outreach? Essentially, I guess all of West Texas,
There's a
right?
one-stop shop,
One stop. Okay.
archwaysupport.com. And right in the middle of that is a big Archway Outreach tab. And you can just go find out how to donate, what it does. There's a video in there that has we had a wonderful company come in and do a short video for us that talks about testimonials and people and talks about how to give. I love to talk about the technology, as you can tell. And so there's a whole tab in there about technology and what does a session look like? What does the equipment look like? Where can you go read about the equipment? I have links to all of the different places. There's a couple of dozen different places.
I saw you have a whole list of resources, books, and things.
Yep.
To read.
Mm-hmm.
I saw at the very bottom, old Bulletproof, Dave Asprey. I used to work for Bulletproof.
Did you?
Yeah, so I've talked with Mr. Asprey numerous times.
But see, there again, it's a body way to stay connected
Yeah.
and to be able to contend with the things that we get from the outside. Like he wears the glasses and he does the vibration plates.
All
and
of it.
all the things.
Yeah.
So
Very
I had
interesting.
Bulletproof coffee before I came, right? So
Really?
I did.
I used to work for Bulletproof Coffee.
Small world.
Small world.
I was like, you
So-
should bring your signed copies
Oh,
of
yeah,
his
I've got an
book.
autographed book from Dave.
I
yeah.
have.
I'm
his
sure you
book.
did.
It's
Yeah.
not signed, but yeah. So that's what you do.
Okay.
And people who call, like you can find me in lots of different places. I always say, go to the website. I don't know that there's one. I probably need less on that website than more, but that's where you go. And really, all you have to do is we have Facebook and Instagram, that stuff too. But really, you just have to contact one of us, and we can lead you right to where you need to go. We
Excellent.
also have a director of development, Megan Paredes, and she's not here today, obviously. I wanted to bring the board president because Steve is, truly, I can't do this by myself.
Yeah.
And I have to have a wonderful board. And Rachel is the one who introduced us, and she's on my board. And so I'm surrounded by these wonderful, inquisitive, caring people. And, there's not, I'll brag a little bit more. For the third year in a row, I don't know how, but like I said, we're a very small practice. But for the third year in a row on the Midland Reporter Telegram's Reader's Choice, we have been honored with the bronze
Nice.
level of for counseling services. And I always just sit back and go like, wow, are we affecting that many people?
Yeah.
And recently we changed our patient portal, and they uploaded all my old clients, and there's a number of them. It's like there's numbers. And I went, I have over 2,000 clients
Oh, wow.
in 15 years. That is a lot of clients.
Yeah.
And so, you, as the years go by, you don't realize this ripple effect. If I could have named it a different name, it probably would have been something to do with the ripple effect,
Yeah.
because I just think it's fascinating. And you guys are going to go, and now all these other people are going to know. And, Steve goes out in the world and tells people and.
Yeah.
And
We'll create a network.
I'm telling you.
Hey, like your brain. Yes.
Boom.
Have those LPCs call me if they want to train in neurotherapy. That's what the foundations usually say is, Allison, how can you do more? And literally, it requires more personnel.
Yeah.
More training, more equipment.
And you can't really do it on your own. You can't be, I want to start a private practice and do this and drop $50K to get going without any training either.
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
And so that's where this has been kind of a struggle to keep it
Mm-hmm.
to grow and grow and grow, because you got to grow reasonably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm particular about the counselors that I choose, because not everybody wants to learn technology.
Yeah.
I mean, you do.
I love it.
So go get your master's and come on down. But it's
If I had the Matrix thing, I would. Take me 30 seconds.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yes.
I would be down for that too. But it's just that's how we'll grow. But
Yeah.
Really, the thing that's the most challenging part, at least for me, is not the work. It's the fundraising. It is the hardest, because it's not what I do.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is what we've just been talking about.
Yeah.
That's where I get my satisfaction and my drive and all of that, and where I'm blessed. But in order to do it for people who can't afford it,
Sure.
and when you see that kid that's in 5 therapies and their family is a single parent, and suddenly you can give them something that truly they've not done before, and suddenly everything's working. Like
Mm-hmm.
the speech therapist said he could say his name, and the occupational therapist said he's using scissors for the first time. Oh,
Yeah.
wasn't doing that for years before neurotherapy.
Right.
So when you can do that and help somebody who can't afford that, there's nothing better than that. And so I fundraise.
Well, we appreciate you both coming in today, and we'll make sure we'll put all your links and everything in the description and on YouTube, and obviously tag you in all of the clips and things like that. But
Great.
if there's anything else you'd like to let the world know.
Well, if you guys, I know that this won't be out by Wednesday, but we're doing a little fundraiser, trivia night fundraiser. And then in May, we do a sporting clay fundraiser, May the 18th. And that's always fun. We have great giveaways, and it's a great time. Everybody laughs and, has a good time. So we do fundraisers like that. If anybody has questions or wants to be a part of this beautiful dream, get a hold of us. We'd love to have you on board, one way or the other.
Appreciate it.
Come
Thanks for
down. I'd
having
love
us
to
in
show it
today.
off.
Yeah, of course. You guys do the trivias pretty frequently, right? Like,
No, this is the only one we've
our
ever
first
done.
one.
oh, okay.
But there are trivia things that happen all over town. This
Okay.
is just
Yeah.
something we said, let's add a fundraiser
Yeah,
this year.
let's hook
and,
everybody up and see how smart they are. You know what I mean? Like, and see who's
Right.
really.
That would be so fun. In fact, my son,
I want on a good team. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, right. I want to see the
in
numbers
fact, my
before
son also is an engineer, and when he was in elementary school, for one of his science projects in elementary school, I had him hook up people And we had them do different things and measure what the difference, the way the brain response looked doing all the different tasks.
Wow.
And he did go to state with that, but people didn't understand
Right.
what he had done.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be cool.
That goes beyond like the making the volcano for science fiction.
Right.
That's way
Baking
cooler.
soda volcano.
Well, and
Yeah.
we have in the past like hooked up couples and
Okay.
trained them
All
while we're
right.
doing psychotherapy, and it's really fun to watch what happens there.
I feel like there's a show
That
about
is-
this
Right.
Yeah.
coming up.
Wonder
All right.
what an eye roll looks like
Yes,
neurally.
Yes.
Oh
Terra
man.
just squirts me with the squirt bottle. She's got
I
that.
treat them like the dog.
But
Yeah,
you can't
she's
really.
got that.
But remember, I can't see emotions. But I can see when the brain is tense. I can see when the brain is over functioning. I can see when the EEG changes.
AKA they're lying. I see what you're saying. All right, well, we're not going to do it. Someone else will do it out there, but
But there's all kinds of fun things you can do with it.
excellent.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good Valentine's date.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
start a
Wednesday
fight.
night. 7.
Slow
We'll
and-
be there.
yeah,
I've
slow
got a table full of
interrogation.
brainiacs. No.
Well,
It
yeah.
is fun. I love what I do, and I'm so glad you guys gave us this
Yeah,
opportunity.
of course.
This is a huge platform for us, and
Well, I appreciate that.
I
You hear that,
really-
YouTube?
I'm really,
That's right.
I really am indebted. I mean, there's not a lot of places where I get to tell this to a bigger audience, and so again, I just really appreciate the invitation and the chance to
Absolutely.
come and tell at least a piece of
No,
of
very
the
happy to have
story.
you both. So, all right, well, thanks again, and we will see you on the next one. Terra, say it.
Bye.